done a few podcasts at this point, and I take notes during the podcast because I think that's just it's just good stuff. And I kept writing down your name, Coop, Marsh. Man, this guy's and I was like, first time I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then Danielle Brandon had great things to say about you. Fee Sagafi had great things to say about you. Dallin had great things to say about you. And I was like, well, clearly I need to get this guy on because he's like a local celebrity that I don't know. So,
I mean, definitely not a celebrity, just the guy behind the scenes, but I appreciate that. And it's, it always feels good to hear that the people that I really try to work hard for, have good things to say. It feels like a good pat on the back. So thank you for that. It's a good start to the week.
You give the people what they want. So as I was preparing, I was sad yet excited, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you the dichotomy here. I was sad because when I started to look, you hadn't been invited on many podcasts, or at least not that I could find. There was one that I could find. I listened to it. It was great. Excited because I was like, man, I'm like popping the proverbial cherry here on the Root Strength podcast.
Dude, you're firing on all cylinders right now. I love it.
Yeah, man. People that listen to this podcast know that I don't really give a shit. I just say what I want. And as Elle says, if you don't apologize for it, you can't get canceled. So I'm not apologizing.
As it should be.
Yeah. So look, I wrote down some notes, and I'm just curious. There's a lot of things I'm curious about. The first one being, like, I kind of understand like how you got into the world of the agency and all of that good stuff, but I want to go back earlier. You said you grew up playing soccer, or at least you played soccer in, was it college or high school?
Yeah, I mean, I played soccer and lacrosse, and I skied competitively.
You skied. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New England, Western Massachusetts. So I lived on
Pats.
I lived on a top of a mountain on a dirt road. We heated our house by fire, so we had to stack wood and bring it in. And we shoveled our own driveway. So, yeah.
You have the quintessential I walked uphill both ways to school story.
I mean, it's not as aggressive as that, but a little bit. Like, my mom's a total badass. And she's just, like, all about hard work, I guess. So, and probably, like, proving a point to me so that I wouldn't grow up like some spoiled brat. So it was... She'd be out there shoveling her half of the driveway. We had like a big U-shaped driveway, right? That had like little runoffs where you could park so that you didn't disturb the flow of the U, so you could drive around the driveway. She shoveled her side of the driveway. She was always out there before I was. I was the one dragging her feet, and she kind of set the tone. So, with that, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of where my like grit and grind comes from. It's just those like early things of, have to do my chores on Friday before I could potentially even fathom hanging out with friends. Got to make sure I shovel my part of the driveway on a snow day before I leave to go ski at the mountain, and got to make sure that she's loaded up with wood so that, she can heat the house so the pipes don't freeze.
Did you have brothers and sisters as well? Were you the only child?
Older sister.
Oh, so you were the younger brother. See, it's interesting. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like when you have an older sister, you end up getting mommed by the older sister. Was that your experience too? Or was it, like baby of the family?
Yeah, I mean, like, psychology will tell you, right, or like the study of that anything above 5 years or more, they take on, kind of like that motherly or fatherly role. Being that she's 5.5 years older than me, I think that's true. I would say my sister's the one who asked for me. I mean, she got me. She asked for it and she got it. And I think for the most part, she probably like tolerated the annoying little brother for a while. And then when we got older, that's when we became really close, which is awesome. But she also like went to bat for me too. It'd be like, I'd be like 13 and she'd be like 18 and like just about to, leave the house for college. And I'd be like, Mom, I want to do this. And she'd be like, no, you're not doing it. My sister would be like, Mom, you should let him do it. Like, and she'd be the voice of reason. And, so I thank Corey for that. She definitely had my back. And so now, that we're, both grown adults, she's a little bit motherly for sure. We have like a family, like the three of us get on a FaceTime, once a week, and sometimes it's too much because I get it from both sides, like my mom and my sister being like, you need to do this, you need to do this. I'm like, yeah, geez, I feel like I'm 14 again. So you just got to ride the wave, but like, you love them for it.
That's amazing. By the way, are you drinking Good Dudes there?
Of course.
Is that okay?
Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not, and you tell me it's a Keurig, I'm gonna kick you off this podcast. Side note, people. If you wake up in the morning and you use a Keurig, I have zero respect for you. I just do. I just like, what are you doing with your life? You're putting Clorox in your body. Anyways, we'll get to Good Dudes and coffee later. But I'm interested in this family FaceTime. So maybe this is just me, but I feel like moms and sisters are like, obviously they have that maternal vibe, right? You're saying, you referenced a study earlier about how they feel if it's 5+ years, whatever, they feel this need to like mom you essentially. And I feel like, and I don't know if it's biological, but I feel like the goal of every woman in my life prior to being married was to get me to be married. It's like, hey, honey, you dating anyone? Like, how's it going? Like, and I'm like, look, people, I'm trying to figure out life over here. And then that switches, people, when you get married. Okay. Then it's, hey, y'all happy? You trying to have kids? You know what I'm saying? You're trying to pop. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Do all you think about is just having, getting married, having kids, like popping them out? Like, I don't know. Is that your experience, or is it just my crazy family?
I think it's just your crazy family. I mean, I get it. Like, I see it on a lot of different. I just see it all the time. But I don't know. My sister is more just in support of whatever it is that I'm doing.
That's good.
Or and then my mom is just like, she's just like the most supportive, like kind of just like this rock. Like, it's like almost like I can like operate in the world and feel the support that comes from her, just kind of like at all times. Even though my mom is very similar to me in the sense that like I don't need to communicate with somebody 24/7 to feel very connected to them or feel like to keep up the relationship, right? Like, you can ask some of my best friends. It's like we can go a few months without seeing each other and a couple months without talking, but as soon as we're around each other, it's like you flip the switch and it's right back. And so that's kind of how my mom is. But when we check in, she's mainly just making sure that all is good in my camp, because she knows that I stress and that I really like to work a lot and try to make things happen. So as long as I'm in a good place, she's good, but she never forces anything. And yeah, she's pretty sage. She's been through it, so. Yeah. Pretty
sage. I love it. All right. So you're a pretty decent skier. And I'm assuming you're a Patriots fan. I'm just assuming.
Big time.
Okay, big time. What was your thoughts as a Patriots fan when Tom Brady left? I mean, right? I mean, he's like the winningest like person ever. And then you get this kid named Mac Jones. Now, obviously, Mac Jones has proven himself to be a formidable quarterback, and I don't want to jack this podcast talking about the Patriots, but I'm just curious, as a Patriots fan, like legit grew up in New England, like, like what were your thoughts? Was it, hey, the regime is over, or Bill Belichick's going to get the next guy?
Yeah, I think it's just like, in Bill we trust. In Tom Brady, you can't be upset with. I mean, he came in, right? He won a boatload of championships, like 6 championships, right? And it's like, you can't really be upset with the dude. He can do whatever he wants. He can do no wrong. He could come back and if anybody from like New England says that he couldn't come back, right, and just like not that we would sign him now, right, because we've obviously got Mac, that's a stud. But like, you're telling me like if he didn't walk into like the most intense Boston bar, right, and like the person who's hating on him for leaving wouldn't like cry tears of joy because it's like essentially like being in front of like the second coming of Christ, and like they're lying to you, you know. Like he's a god in the area, and he'll stay that way, like, and as he should. So he's free to do whatever he wants. I mean, dude, like last year when the Buccaneers were in the Super Bowl, I was 100% cheering for Tom and Gronk. It's like I felt like I was just watching, you know, just the retired version of the Patriots out there. So, you know, I was fired up. But Mac Jones that kid is sick. You gotta love like just a young dog like that. Like he's just a rookie, and he's just like he wants to like scrap and win. I mean, shooting through 3 passes, right? And obviously, like it's a great game plan by Bill versus the Buffalo Bills. But like, I mean, you know, he didn't let ego get in there, right? And like try to call any audibles or do anything, you know, outside of the game plan. They just stuck to what was going to work, and it worked, and they won. That's all that matters, and onward, you know. And that's
just ran the ball.
Thing about the Patriots, right? Is like the whole like on to Cincinnati mindset, like you know, just blinders on, next goal.
Did you go? Did you stay in state for college, or where'd you go to college?
Yeah, so I actually, for being I don't know, I guess a decent student, right? Like an honor roll student, had to get honors to be able to do anything, right? To be able to like have a car, to play sports, whatever. Had to be respectable in the classroom, which I appreciate that. Although I tested it once and got removed from the ski team in 7th grade, so that never happened again. But you know, I didn't really like. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to college, 100%. I'm going to college. And I didn't really apply to college that much. And so I applied to Westfield State, didn't get in, applied to University of Utah, was going to go there, mainly just to ski. Excuse me. And then I realized I probably shouldn't go to Utah just to ski. So I ended up, sorry, I'm still recovering a little bit from this cold.
COVID, man. Kicks everybody's ass.
Yeah, right. No, so I looked at Utah, and I remember my dad sat me down, right, put like an easel out, and he was like, check it out. You can go to University of Utah for 4 years at, you know, let's call it an average price of this, right?
Yeah.
This is what you owe. He's like, or you can do 2 years of community college, like your sister did.
Your dad's a smart man.
And then go to Utah, and you know, you come out with this amount. And I'm like, yeah, I really like that one. That's, you know, I'm a fan of that. And I was fortunate enough, right, that like I had grandparents that had like put aside, you know, money for the grandchildren to go to school. And then when the stock market like died in 2009, you know, a lot of that essentially got cut in half. And so it was like, hey, community college, Utah, you do your part. He's like, I'll help out and do mine. And with that, like you'll be straight, right? Like you'll come out 0 debt. Or you go to Utah 4 years and you're coming out with debt, and that's on you. And I was like, yeah, I don't want debt. Avoid that like the plague. So I went to JUCO and went to junior college, and I played soccer there for 2 years. So that was really fun. Had a ton of fun with it. And then I ended up not going to Utah. I stayed in state, and I went to UMass Amherst. So, and then I got to study abroad for one of the semesters during that too. So that was pretty sweet.
Oh, nice. Where did you study abroad at?
I studied abroad in England, Oxford.
Wow. That sounds like really sophisticated. Like you should definitely lead with that. When people ask, you should be like Oxford.
I mean,
and just let it sit in.
Yeah. It's just like a really, you know, I don't know, me kind of way that I got into that. Like if you like, you know, in my friend group, there's like a joke that I've always got the deals, right? And like, you know, find the back door into things, which I guess is fitting with what I do for a career. But
it is.
I mean, do you want the story for how that happened?
100. Look, people seem so, what's the word? Like shy and timid. Like they don't want to tell me the stories. Like they're going to take up our time. Like, man, we got all day. This is the Cooper Marsh podcast, baby.
Jeez.
Come on. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So like when I transferred from Holyoke Community College to UMass, your GPA resets, right? Because you're coming in as a new major. And so I went to UMass and I was like, okay, I want to be in the business school, but I didn't have a business, I didn't have a associate's degree in business from HCC. I just took random classes to graduate, with a liberal arts degree. And that year coming in, UMass made the decision like, hey, you cannot just like transfer in as a junior and join the business school unless you already have a business degree. And like their whole thing is like Eisenberg School of Business, like a really good business school. And I was like, crap, man. Well, I guess I'll do communications. And then, people were like, no, you're not doing communications. So I was like, all right, I'll do psychology. And then as I was enrolling in psychology classes, like during the, like enrollment day, I panicked and then, enrolled in all communications classes. And then, and then they're like, as I was like telling people that, they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, why don't you do economics? It's the closest thing to business. So I looked at that and I'm like, all right, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So I took I was like, all right, I'll be an economics major. Cause at the end of the day, college was just like a means to an end for me. Like it was never going to be like, oh, I'm going to be an, economist. I'm just going to graduate and then figure it out. So I transfer, I'm in entry-level economics classes as a junior. So by this time I've kind of figured out college and realized like, hey man, like, you're paying for this. Any screw ups, you have to be here longer and you've got to pay more money and, whatever. So I'm a junior and I'm in all freshman level, intro to micro, intro to macro, like just simple economics courses, which are very, very basic and not hard. And, so I finished that first semester at UMass and I've got like a 3.98 GPA or something. And I was like, man, I'm a stud. Like, and then I was like, you know what? I should study abroad somewhere where like the university is like well known or something. It'll bolster my resume. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking around, right? And I'm like, oh, I kept seeing like Oxford as an option for us at UMass. And I was like, the prerequisite was like submit a 10-page paper. And I'm terrible at writing formally. Like if I can write creatively, sure. Like I can do well with that. But, I'm like, man, I've probably only ever written an 8-page paper and it was probably like a D, like it was not, I was like, I guess I'll submit that, like whatever. And then I walk into the, the study abroad affairs office and I meet this guy, Dr. Calpin, and he's this British dude who studied at Oxford. He's from England. And he had run this program between University of Georgia and Oxford for like the last decade. They have like a sister program where you can just like go over and do it and study at Oxford. And I was like, he's like, what's your GPA? And I was like, 3.98. And he's like, oh, yeah, you want to study at Oxford? And I was like, yep. And he's like, all right, yeah, you're good. Here, fill this out. And I filled out literally like a 1-page thing as if it was like a waiver form, like my name, address, my T-shirt size. And he's like, yeah, you're good. You're in. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, done. And so he backdoored me in through UGA to Oxford. So I went over and studied abroad for, 3 months. And I coached CrossFit over there at the Athlete Center. It's like CrossFit TAC. So I coached CrossFit so that I could train because I couldn't afford it. The exchange rate was terrible at that time, so I was like hemorrhaging money over there. I played soccer for Keble College, which is Oxford's like consists of like 36 colleges, which are like their own thing. So I played soccer over there. I played rugby, and then I played lacrosse for the university. So like Oxford as a whole. So it allowed me to like travel around England for free, and it gets you all this like BS kind of clout. You're a blue, quote unquote. So you get like VIP in the club, and you get to go into like specific bars and stuff. It's hilarious.
You're a gangster.
Dude, it's pretty funny. You like wear like specific bow ties or ties out and stuff. So like to like distinguish yourself. And yeah, you could go to like, there's like a pregame bar that you'd go to called like Vinny's, and it'd be like only for Blues. So you'd like walk in, there'd be like photos of the teams like lining the walls as you walk up and stuff. It's like it's a very interesting place, man. It's beautiful over there. But it was cool. Very cool.
Wow. So this is so being a blue is a social status, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And it entitles you to go into these clubs and bars and things. So this is fascinating to me. Like, did you know about this before you got into this, or did you get into it and you're like, oh, has some cool like perks, and then you just ball out straight gangster status?
I mean,
This is fascinating.
I didn't even know that they had lacrosse over there because, like, they have obviously, like, different sports. So, like, we just don't, like, field hockey is just hockey over there, right? Because ice hockey is not, like, they play it, but it's just not what they play. Field hockey is what they play. So that's their hockey, and men and women play, and it's, like, wildly intense. And they have netball, right? And they have lacrosse, but lacrosse is usually men and women playing, like, the women's version, which is, like, no pads. And so I didn't even know they had lacrosse, so I didn't know anything about being a blue or whatever. And I looked and wanted to play lacrosse over there, especially because you come over as an American, like, having played growing up and through high school, and I probably could have played at, like, a pretty bad college. But you come over there, right, and you're like a stud. Like, oh, you know how to play with both hands and, like, understand how the rules work. Like, yeah, you're gonna be great out here. So I saw a kid with the gear, like, walking by me, and I probably, like, screamed at him, like, hey, get over here, like, where are you coming from, And he's like, lacrosse practice, mate. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, where is it? Like, can I play? They're like, oh yeah, absolutely, you can play. Like, we're taking anybody. And I was like, yeah. So yeah, I got into that, and next thing you know, you have all these, like, weird perks, and I did not know about them, but it's like a whole, social cultural thing. And you do all, it would entail, like, other things too. Like, you'd go on these things called crew dates, where your team would go on a date with, like, another team, and you'd go out to get Indian food. They just call it curry over there. And you'd, like, it was essentially just like a wild pregame before you go to the bar. Like, everybody would drink their own bottle of wine and get rowdy, and then you'd go out, and you get free champagne when you go to the VIP section of the clubs. Like, it's just, like, it's so stupid, man. It's so funny how, like, how much they want to, like, have that ego stroke over there. So, but you're going to take advantage 100%. So, yeah.
And this was how long, and how old were you?
This is my fall semester of senior year. So I had just turned 21. So because I'm like I'm young for my grade, or I was. So I had just turned 21, but then I went to a place where you only need to be 18 to drink. So it's kind of working backwards, but yeah, no, it was a ton of fun, man. And, like, Oxford as a whole is just, it's wild, right? You're, like, riding your bike to lacrosse practice, and I'm, like, biking by a college that was, formed in 1530. And you're like, sheesh, this entire college is older than our country by, like, 200 years, like, you're like, what?
Yeah. So, like, was there ever a thought that you're like, man, this is so much fun that I'm just going to hang out here, like, kind of, extended vacay type of deal? Or was it like, okay, hey, I got to get my ass back in a year, or whatever the case was?
I mean, I wanted to stay for sure. Like, I loved it. That was way more fun than UMass, because, once again, college was just like a means to an end. Like, UMass, it's, I'm over there. I come in as a junior transfer, right? So, like, UMass is notoriously, like, the zoo, right? They call it Zoo Mass. And don't get me wrong, like, I've been to some, like, ripping parties, but it's not exactly, like, my scene per se. And when you come in as a junior, right, like, you don't have those, like, freshman ties right off the bat. So, I had come in as a junior, and that was right when I was, like, exposed to CrossFit. And so it was like, I'm going to class, I'm working at a coffee shop, I'm coaching skiing, I'm doing CrossFit, and I also just found Game of Thrones at that point. So I'm binge watching Game of Thrones. Like, that was a big priority. So, like, there was not a ton of time to, like, just chill and be. And so Oxford was definitely something where I, took advantage of, like, all things, right? Like, I just flew up to Scotland by myself, like, trained up there, ran around, like, we went to Amsterdam for, like, Thanksgiving or whatever with my sister and Eric's. They flew over. it was just like, you're just able to, kind of grab life by the horns and do all of the random stuff that you want to do on a whim. And so it was awesome. So I definitely wanted to stay, but I also was like, this is incredibly tough, right? Like you have like what's called tutorials, right? Like they teach in a different way than us, right? Like we don't have, there's no lecture halls where you have, 300 freshmen in one person. Like you have a tutorial and it's at most like 1-on-4, but typically it's 1-on-2 or 1-on-1 for an hour and a half once a week. And you're with like the world's leading expert of whatever subject. Like they probably wrote the book that you are learning from, and then you like discuss something, have a topic, and then you got to go write a 10-page paper for next week, and then you got to defend the 10-page paper. And so like you have 2 tutorials a week, so you're writing 20 pages a week.
Oh shit!
And so that's what it was like. And I mean, shoot, I remember the first time like I had this. The first time I handed a paper, and it was for Dr. George Bitsakakis, which was this Greek dude, right? Like great environmental economist. And I handed the paper and I got it back and I got like a D or something. I failed it. And I was like, oh man, like I'm so over my head here. Like they only use all types of, algorithms and whatnot to explain what they're talking about. And I was like, this is not my cup of tea. Like, and then I realized like, oh, the dude wrote the book that I'm working from. And so you can't really argue with yourself. And so then I just started, everything like I quoted or referenced was just him. And then he just was like, yup, I agree. Yeah, 100%. Can't argue with myself. Like, and so I started getting A's on all the papers because I realized like, dude, he's not going to say that I'm wrong when I'm using his, his work. And so then I like felt like I kind of hacked Oxford at that point, but you still had to write 10 pages. So I was like, man, this is great, but I need to get back to, the US where I can write a little less and do more like tests or something a little easier.
This is great. What I'm hearing, and obviously we're slowly getting there, but what I'm hearing from you is, these experiences that you had is in a way really no different than kind of what you're doing now. And what I mean by that, it's like, it's psychology, it's politicking. Like it's literally people. It's literally people management. It's like how to deal with people 101,
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, I've had like just growing up, I think my mom exposed me to like a multitude of situations where like socially I had to navigate and, handle my own. And, going outside of the country, you see more of that, right? And like I've been to a lot more places than just England. It's not exactly a huge stretch out of the country.
Sure.
But yeah, just growing up, right? Like coaching, like I taught 4 to 6 year olds how to ski, right? Like little kids. And then, I taught freestyle and, teaching kids how to jump jumps and grind rails and whatever. And, you have to like communicate from like, I'm like working with kids from like that could be even as low as like 3 to like 13. And then it's like, I'm communicating with their adults, or their adults, their parents, who are bigwigs on Wall Street, right? CEOs of companies. And like, just like the network that I have from that is pretty vast and some high roller individuals. And it's like, so I got to communicate with them, and then I'm in a coffee shop working, or, I'm on a sports team. So it's like, you like expose yourself to all these different, people and backgrounds and different experiences, right? Like varying experiences than yours. And I think it just allows you to learn how kind of people tick and what's the best way to communicate with them. And so, yeah, I guess that applies to, how I'm dealing with companies to negotiate with people, or to, be the middleman between, that like a business and an athlete, or, managing athletes and trying to manage expectations or egos, or, keep them pumped up for competing, et cetera. So yeah, it all kind of plays in for sure. And, if I don't understand how something works or how it's going to work, then I'll probably, figure out a way and learn and then adjust and go. So Yeah, it all plays in.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think as humans, like, and I know I've fallen victim to this, is we tend to surround ourselves only with the people that believe the same thing as us in the same way as us even. And, you know, we talked about this last week with James Fitzgerald. It's like we really do live in echo chambers. And, you know, it can be dangerous, right? Because though it feels good, right, to constantly be told that, hey, you're doing the right thing. Hey, I agree with that. Yeah, man, me too. Like, all those things are great, yet it never really challenges the things that we truly believe. It never really promotes, I guess is the correct word, promotes us to get out of our own comfort zones. And I think it's just, people are too damn comfortable, you know, and that's just, and kind of what I'm hearing from you is that was never the case. It's like you never got comfortable, which I think it's commendable.
No, I appreciate that. And I think you're right. I think I have like I grew up with divorced parents from like the age of, 3 years old, right? So I'm always like bouncing back and forth between them. And so you never really get like all that settled. And so I feel like I have like this like rooted, like deep fear of complacency. And that's not like sound like, oh man, strive to be the best all the time. Like, but it's more just like not like, I feel like I know when I've had my fill of something and it's time to move forward. And so like I lived in Providence, Rhode Island for, like 6 years, and I love Providence. I love the people there. They're like family. And honestly, I almost consider that like area more home than Western Mass. Except for obviously my mom's there. So that is home. But I was there and it felt like I had just like, kind of like come up against a wall of like personal development and growth. And like, this is like, I'm capped. Right. And so, I mean, I'm honestly like working on potentially like buying some real estate back there so that I can be able to go to Providence more often. But I just felt like professionally, like I had like hit my wall. And so that's when I moved out to Arizona, because it was like, all right, it's time for the next thing. It's time to get uncomfortable and grow. Right. And I think that's been great, because you talk about being in an echo chamber, and, I think people very much are like a victim of that. But, it's kind of, it's on you to get outside of that and get some varying degree of views or whatever. And I'm not saying you got to go out and spend time with somebody who's completely opposite of you, but somebody who can push your boundaries a little bit is huge. And I think I've found that a lot out here. I mean, if you just like look at where I'm from, right? Like Western Massachusetts is like a hippy dippy rural place, right? Like, very liberal leaning, like, super like environment friendly, which like, I mean, honestly, if you're not environment friendly, I don't know who you are, but, you come out here like Arizona, it's like a majority like conservative state, like, and this is not to get like political, but I think with like what I grew up with and then like what I'm exposed to now, it's like I start to hear, varying opinions on all things, right? Political, religion, social issues, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like reaffirmed at the end of the day that there's too much like, us versus them, and not enough just like, hey, let's all just be good people and like hear each other out, and then let's find a middle ground and move forward. And I think I've definitely been pushed on things that like I believe and learned and adapted and grown in that space, just like on all things because of that. And I think it's helped me with what I'm doing. So yeah, no, I think I haven't really been in an echo chamber, which is very cool.
Yeah, you said something that kind of caught my attention because, excuse me, I never really thought about it like this until you said it, and then this is why I love doing these, right? Sure, I get to ask questions, but ultimately, I'm like, as you're speaking, I'm asking myself questions, and you pointed something out. You said your parents were divorced at the age of 3, so my parents were also divorced. Granted, it was a little bit later. It was like at 8, so a little bit more awareness of what was going on there. But you said something to the effect of I was kind of going back and forth, and it was like it was really never an opportunity for me to get settled there. It was always this kind of next thing. So you couldn't get complacent. And, I think about that, what you just said, and because I'm kind of in the same boat with that. And I go, I wonder, and maybe this has nothing to do with it. Maybe I'm like overanalyzing, but I think it's worth bringing up to chat about is, with those experiences of going back and forth, and maybe even some things that were unsettling, childhood things that maybe were unsettling as a result of that. It's really interesting to hear someone say that, because I've never thought that perspective. I've never had that perspective on that, is that, you never had the opportunity to be, complacent, because like you said, you were just going back and forth. And I wonder how much of that drives we'll call it drive now. It's like, I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, because I enjoy this thing called balance, whatever balance is, and we could get into that or not. I think that's an interesting perspective take. But what I do really enjoy is, like, I enjoy working hard at something. Like, I enjoy coming on here and making a quality podcast, for example, not being complacent, not asking the same 6 questions. No offense to everybody else's podcast, but for the most part, most people ask the same fucking 6 questions over and over again. And I'm just like, this is boring. Goodbye. Like, there's this drive in me to I'll say what it is, like, one up, like, be better in that regard, and not to put someone else down, but to just make something that I'm proud of. And I wonder how much of that, this is the moral of the story, I wonder how much of that stems from that experience as a kid of, like you said, kind of going back and forth, not being complacent. That's just interesting. Just thought I would bring that up because I related to it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that take. Yeah, I don't know if it's, you say like, oh, am I overanalyzing or whatever? I think it's whatever it is, it's your experience, right? So
yeah,
people can't take that from you. So how you feel about it is how it is, right? At
sure.
least in your perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a combination of, like, not getting too settled, so you don't get too complacent. But then I think there's also and this is like a slightly different, or like an add-on to this, but I think that there's a factor when you have siblings too, that you want to, keep up or whatever, right? So, like, my sister was a stud, and she always kind of has been, like, super successful or whatever. So it's like, I want to, run with her in that regard, or do more, or keep up, be better, whatever. Like, and so I think that there's, I don't know, maybe, shoot, here I am. Maybe I'm reframing how I feel about all of that. And like, I actually appreciate it more than I think, because at the end of the day, like, my parents being divorced, like, I never really thought twice about it because it happened so young. Whereas, like, you were 8, so you probably actually have some memory of, like, being together, and then that split, which is, traumatic. And I'm sorry to hear about that. But yeah, like, my sister would have been, like, the same age, so she actually, like, knows. Whereas, like, I don't know, I just thought I had 2 Christmases, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. So, and then it's like, you get into, like, relationships now or things like that, right? And it's like, maybe I have some, like, deep-seated fear of, like, commitment, or, like, can I actually envision, like, marriage and being with somebody forever or whatever, right? So there are things that probably come up from that. And I say that with my girlfriend sitting, like, right next to me.
Hey, I get it. But I'm married, so I understand.
It's like stuff like that, where it's like, there's definitely some some, like, waste left over that you have to sort through at some point. But 100%. I really at the time didn't think much about it. It's just kind of it was my reality, and
right.
It's many people's reality, and you just you keep going. I had 2 loving, supportive parents, and they just happened to live in different houses, and it kept it moving. And now I have I've had a stepmom for I don't know, like 15, 16 years, who's, like, incredible. And so it's like our family just grew, and it was, it was all good. So yeah, it's good. It's interesting to, like, talk about this more, especially on a podcast. Yeah. Kudos to you, not getting into the standard questions, but getting beyond it.
No, yeah. People ask, how do you prep for these podcasts? I'm like, well, I listened to a few things, I wrote down a few notes, and I say a quick prayer, and we just roll with it. I don't really have questions. I just kind of, I think, and I've said this a lot, but I think the more times I say it, like the more times it reaffirms that this is really truly the way that I am. I think it's so important for people to be curious in life. I really do. I think it's a really good attribute. I think it's a really good attribute to ask a question and just shut your mouth, right? And I say this a lot, but we live in a world where you can just ask Siri, anything you want to ask her, and she's got an answer in 5 seconds, right? And so it's sometimes interesting to just sit back and try to have human connection with people, and be vulnerable and be able to say, hey, look, me too, and I understand where you're coming from, and hey, that happened to me or whatever. And so I think, back to your point about, relationships and this, that, and the third, it is interesting. And I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan. And, he talks about this a lot about, your childhood and things that happen, that really create and mold you to the person that you are today. And I do think that, I do think that, depending upon what happened, whether it's divorce or whatever, of these unfortunate things, they can really shade, I guess is a good word, shade some of your experiences, and almost make it to where, you can look at a relationship and go, wow, man, am I really ready for commitment, And I definitely felt some of that at times. Granted, I do think it helps, finding the quote, we'll say, the right person. And granted, I don't believe that, there's one person for everybody and only one person, because that would have been jacked up when that one person married the one wrong person. So I don't believe in that theory, but that's so much bullshit. But I do believe there are people that you are more so compatible with, and people that you are less compatible with, and I do see that. But that's just an aside for anyone thinking that they want to get married in life. Of course, I love my wife. She's great. She's a great CrossFitter, and she's really good to me. She listens to these, so this is like the 30 seconds where I have to really build this up.
There you go.
She cooks great food. She's an amazing person. Anyways, okay. Now that I've checked that box, I'm just kidding. Interestingly enough, you said you left Rhode Island. At that time, were you working in Rhode Island, or was this you left Rhode Island because it was after college, or kind of fuse that timeline for me and help me understand where we are?
Yeah, so I graduated from UMass, and I had a job offer with the New Jersey Devils, the NHL team.
No shit, dude. That's so cool.
Well, so it was because of the ski connections, right? So some of the families that I coached, their kids had a ski from ages 4 to, I still keep in touch with them. So, now they're in college. It's crazy. But some of those guys, right, they were boys. They were in the same frat when they were at UPenn, with the guy who owns the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. So it's
wow.
They just called in some favors. I went down and interviewed, and I got a job offer there, and then I got accepted into Teach for America. And so
oh, cool.
I was I don't know which one I want to do. And I'm New Jersey's kind of and this, sorry to everybody who's from New Jersey in the country, but New Jersey's the armpit of America. There's definitely some beautiful parts in New Jersey, 100%. My boy, one of my best friends out in Arizona here, Trevor James, hell of a CrossFit athlete and just human being. But he's from New Jersey, and I just I give him crap for it. But he knows though too. There's some beautiful parts of New Jersey, and then you get into that Newark area, just right outside of the New York City, and it's almost this is where New York City's organs are, or kind of their spleen and stomach and colon of the city are right here, right? And so that's where the Devils are, and I was just yeah, I cannot live there. That's just not me at all. I'm from the countryside. I cannot. I struggle with big cities for a long period of time. So I went with Teach for America. I got accepted and sent to Providence, Rhode Island, which is probably one of the cushiest, best areas you could be sent, right? Because Teach for America is AmeriCorps, so you get sent into some tougher areas, right? Some low income areas to work with those students. And teach full time. And so I left UMass. I spent the summer in Queens, training and teaching like at a summer school in Harlem. And then I went to Providence and lived there, but I taught in like Central Falls, which is just like a melting pot of diversity right outside of Providence.
Yeah.
It's like an incredible area. I love it. Like, you have days where like, all the different, cultures kind of like come together, and their parents would make food and they'd bring it in. So you have like empanadas and like, learning how to bachata and like things like that. Like, it was just incredible.
Amazing.
So yeah, like I still keep up with some of my students who are like in college now too, and are so badass. But yeah, I was Mr. Marsh for 2 years. I taught 8th grade math, and
God bless you.
Yeah, got my master's degree in education at the same time, because they just like kind of allowed you to do that. So I was like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I did that for 2 years, and then I ended up. So to rewind a little bit, when I was over in England, when I was coaching this guy named Jim Peskett, and he was the European distributor for XEndurance, right? The company, a supplement company. And so he, was like, hey, try this extreme endurance stuff. And I tried it. I was like, wow, this stuff's really cool. And I'm like huge into CrossFit. I'd love to get into the CrossFit industry more. So like I had reached out and was like, hey, do you guys have any jobs like coming out of college? And they're like, no, we're like really small. We're just like not ready to take on a full-time like East Coast rep or anything like that. And I was like, okay, no worries. So I'm doing Teach for America, and like halfway through year one, they like circle back and are like, hey, we want to hire somebody full-time. And I'm like, oh man, what do I do? And I had talked to my mom about it, and she's like, you don't break your commitments. Figure it out, right? Like pitch them on another way to work with them. So I was like, all right. So I told them, hey, I can't leave the students. Not even after the end of year one. I've got to do both years. But I will work it part-time during like, breaks and summertime and things like that. And then when I'm done with my 2 years, I'll come in full-time. And they were like, all right, cool, let's do it. So finished my 2 years teaching, went full-time with XEndurance as like the East Coast rep manager, whatever you want to call it. I was the only one over on that side of the country. And I ran around, selling supplements to CrossFit gyms and doing CrossFit a lot. And, it was great. And so then one of the owners and like the CEO of XEndurance is Jason St. Clair. And Jason is like my mentor, guide, like older brother. Like he's a lot to me. He's just an incredible human being. And, Jay was in the agency space of CrossFit, like back in 2012, right? He was the kind of the first guy in the door with Camille and Josh Bridges. And so he also is a certified baseball agent. So he actually like represents people in the big leagues too, as well as, runs XEndurance with his team there. So, he wears a lot of different hats, and I just saw that from the agency side of things. And I felt like I was had hit my cap with, being a supplement rep. It was like, hey man, I really want to do that. Like I've always wanted to be an agent. I didn't realize you could do it without having a law degree. Because Jay actually, he got drafted out of high school for baseball, and he never actually went to college because he was a stud baseball player. Like he would have been like one of those guys who signs $100 million deal if he didn't blow his elbow out twice, which was really unfortunate. He's really good, like really really good. And so, but like, he has a lot of tenacity about him. And, he went from when he retired to like selling printers and doing whatever to, being a really successful baseball agent. Yeah. Well, because they told him before he could be a baseball agent, like you need success 3 years in selling something terrible. So he was like, all right. So he just, but like he just like bit down and went and sold copiers and printers and some other stuff. It was just like terrible work. And, then he got hired, and, he's a hell of an agent. And I was like, cool. Like he's got like traditional training, like from like quote unquote real sports. Like I want to understudy and learn from you, et cetera. And he was like, all right, cool. So he took me on. And so I kind of worked part-time as an agent for like a year while I was still with XEndurance. And it was perfect because obviously he runs XEndurance. Like he could allow that. And then I left XEndurance and went full time into the agency, and I moved out west to be closer to Jason, and sit in an office across from him. And so, yeah, and so like the last 3 years, I've been running lab management full time. Worked myself into an equity position, so now Jay and I are partners, and obviously he has to focus a lot on XEndurance. And what he does there, but him and I and some like other Deb Graff and this guy Zach Long and someone new coming on, kind of Jared. We all are behind the scenes with lab management, as well as I have a part-time employee in the office, this younger kid named Jake, who does some of our marketing and warehouse work and things like that. So yeah, we are behind the scenes of lab, and a lot of that is just like huge thanks to Jay, because he's the one who allowed me to come in and kind of like, I feel like, fulfill my purpose and start to live my dream, because I love what I do.
I'd like to point out that you did the ultimate sales job, which is convince 8th graders that they should learn math.
Yeah, dude, I love my kids. I could care less about, like, there was some, like, schools are political and annoying.
Yeah.
But man, the kids were awesome. Like, awesome. My jump rope, my like little RPM jump rope says Mr. Marsh on it.
No way. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like crazy to think about. I'm like, damn, dude, I was like legit a teacher. But I have like, yeah, like I like saved all the notes, that you'd get and things like that. Like just stuff that like makes you want to like, just makes you
keep going.
Yeah, it just makes you feel full as a human being. It's like, it was unbelievable. But yeah, like, so they're just like, they're badass, those kids, man.
So. That's awesome. So, okay. So at the time when you came on with Jay, did Jay already have Camille and Josh Bridges, like when you came on?
Yeah, he did. He also had like Matty Rogers.
Oh, wow.
And so he also, I mean, like, dude, he's so good at his job. When he like is able to actually spend some more time like on the lab side of things as opposed to XEndurance, I'm like, I feel like we're just like crushing. And so I'm always like, yo, give me like another hour of your time. And so he also had just recruited like Bethany Shadburne, right? Bethany had won the RX division as a young, as a 21-year-old in Miami. We met her, obviously she's got this like loud, fun personality. She's like an incredible human being. And, he's like, yo, I recruited that gal. I'm like, all right, sweet. And then like but she was young, right? She was still like 21, going through different seasons of life. And like, I think Jay was like, they just like butt heads a little bit. But they like, he loves her, and like, Bethany's a big fan of Jason, but it was just like, at the time, it was just like, he was like, yo, like, I bit off more than I could chew with this one. She's wild. Like, and it's so funny, but like saying that now, just seeing this, like, Bethany has evolved as a human being to like one of the most wholesome, well-rounded, humble badasses alive. Like, she is just so sick. But like, he was like, yo, you want to work with her? Like, you want to work like hand in hand with her? Like, I was like, yeah, obviously. And so, first it was her, but right before her, this woman had hit him up looking for representation. I think she had found him through Camille. Her name was Cynthia Gauthier, and she was a monster truck driver. She was a French Canadian. And I was like, and he was like, I don't have time for this, but this is how I learned, like, in terms of Camille. He's like getting into a new sport outside of baseball. Yeah. He's like, I just ripped the Band-Aid off and learned. And so he's like, you want this one? And I was like, yeah. So I started working with Cynthia, who's a monster truck driver. And she was my first client. And like the first deal I did was with Lincoln Electric, like the massive welding company.
Yes.
That's like, she likes to weld. And they were also like, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with like motorsports, but she can like backflip an 18,000 pound truck. She's wild. And so that was Cynthia, my first client, but Bethany was my first CrossFit client. And, we started working together, and then I was able to start kind of like recruiting and growing from there. And so, obviously it's become its own whole thing, but, we also work with traditional athletes too. We've partnered up with Spire Sports to work with Scott Stallings and do, some of his brand building and marketing deals there. We partnered up with like CAA Sports, right? Like one of the biggest agencies in the world, to work with Josh Hader, arguably the best closer in baseball. And we've, partnered up with like Aces, which is Jason's baseball agency that he works with. And, that's where this guy, Zach Long, has been doing work with us, like in the baseball realm, like we're working with a lot of like traditional guys, like Austin Barnes and Charlie Blackmon and like, these studs in the baseball world. So, working their like off field deals. Right. So it's been awesome.
What do you feel? I mean, cause I've heard you mention a few things now. You've mentioned CrossFit, you mentioned baseball, you've mentioned monster truck driving. Obviously those sports are very different.
Yeah.
But in terms of the deals that you're doing, because this is my perception, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like in baseball, it's not uncommon for these guys to get paid, $100 million. You know what I'm saying? I don't know on the monster truck side what people are getting.
Not that.
Not that. But I would have to guess CrossFit's probably the lowest on the totem pole of what you represent. And when I say lowest on the totem pole, I'm talking about in dollars.
No. So you would think that in terms of like overall income, yeah, because let's be real, right? Like CrossFit, there is no like team, right? You're not like CrossFit HQ isn't like, yeah, let me sign Amanda Barnhart to a 6-year, $48 million deal with a guarantee of 12 million, there's none of that. I mean, it'd be incredible if it was, and I think those guys deserve to get, paid a lot more. But in terms of like, you got to think of it this way. Baseball, right? You have a team, right? Obviously they have $1 billion, budgets. It's insane for some of the teams, right?
Yeah.
Obviously the big ones, Yankees, Red Sox. But they have statistics, right? Like they have like a book of like, hey, this is how good I am, right? Like here you go, and you can argue that in a court of law. They can literally argue that, right? Like called arbitration when you go through that process. But so they get paid a ton of money to play, right? And and they don't really care so much about social media or something, because it's like, I signed a $130 million deal. Like I don't ever have to work a day in my life again if they're smart with their money. Who cares to make $5,000 on a post or whatever? Like, but in terms of like what I do in like getting them deals, because like that's where we live, is like, okay, we're branding you off the field, right? Like I'm not dealing with those clubhouse deals like Jason does for his athletes. Like he's
I gotcha.
Oh, I just re-signed Kevin Plawecki to the Red Sox. Like he's doing that. Like I'm not doing that. I'm not a certified baseball agent. So I'm doing the marketing deal. So it's like you look at somebody who's got, Josh Hader, he has 60,000 followers on Instagram, and Danielle Brandon has 340,000.
That's bonkers.
She's got some more value there. Now, that does not mean that sometimes, it's like when you play with traditional sports, right? There's a bar that is automatically set higher for them to play because, they're used to a certain level of income. So it is all like case by case basis. But, there are deals that I've done for, Emma Cary, Dallin Pepper, Danielle Brandon, Josh Bridges, whatever, right? That are like big deals. And then, there's been deals where on the golf side of thing that are big deals, or we've done a baseball one. It's a small deal because the athlete just really likes the button down shirts that you're dealing with or something like that, and they'll post for free because they want to just get that stuff. And I'm like, no, we're not gonna do that for free, but like here's a little bit of money. And it's like, they're like, yes. It's so weird. It just It totally varies across the board, and it varies by company, you know, by what you think the company's kind of like cap is, what the competitors look like in that landscape.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things to think about when you're navigating this stuff, which is why having an agent is useful if you're in need of one. But like, you know, it's like you just look and you say like, okay, I'll give an example. You look in CrossFit, right? And you look at the headphone space, right? You see ESC audio. They're all over the place, right? Harry's done a great
100%.
job with that. He's an awesome dude. And he's like a one-man show that's just like is a workhorse. But you look at something like that and you're like, all right, cool. Does the athlete like the product, right? They really like it. Okay, cool. It checks that box. Now, you know, is Harry a big brand? No, not at all. So his marketing spend is absolutely going to be lower, but he's probably going to be like loyal to a T, and he's going to do everything he can to help grow that brand, right? Because it helps him, you know, sell units. And he's also like, he's positioned himself in a way that's like, there aren't other headphone brands in the space, right? So, you know, there's this ability where it's like, well, if we want to do a partnership with them, right? Like it's going to be something that gives him value as a company, but also, you know, is fair as much as it can be to the athlete with who's in the space, right? Like, so there's not competitors necessarily driving the budget up on that. But like he checks a lot of the boxes for the athlete that they like the product and they want to work together, but he's going to do the best that he can do. And they're going to like, you know, identify that, or I'm going to identify that, and you know, we're going to work together and try to grow together. That's not to say that you wouldn't take like a non-endemic brand and try to bring them in. Like if Dre Beats was like, you know, hey, I want in, like with the right person, you can pull them in, and we've done that plenty of times, right? Like we're not just pigeonholed to one set of brands. We always try to go outside the sphere and drag them in, which is what we're doing in large part with golf right now, because we're pulling all these fitness brands into golf because that's the way the game's trending.
Oh shit!
But
that's fucking cool.
It's just like it's like a way you think about that, right? But then when you turn around and you look at something like, you know, supplementation or apparel or footwear, right? There's plenty of brands, there's plenty of options. Like people need to come correct, and they need to pay, and they need to, you know, you pay to play, and you know, you need to constantly be evolving as a brand and doing things, you know, right by the athlete and you know, trying to put out the best product possible, et cetera. Because you know, if you don't, you're going to be, you know, passed over, and athletes will move on. So it's just like there's all these different ways to like look at these companies that want to work with athletes. And you know, at the end of the day, we're trying to take care of and protect the athlete and get them compensated fairly or more than fairly for their time. But also we're trying to help grow businesses, and we're trying to get them in the game, right, and not take them out of the game. The last thing we want to do is nickel and dime a company to nothing so that the athlete gets paid for 1 year and then the company goes out of business, right? Like that's not what we're trying to do. Like I'd rather take a little bit less and go long-term with that company and make more money in the long term over multiple years and have a great relationship and have that brand succeed as well, so that, you know, it expands and helps the sport grow. And, you know, then we're off to the races, really. So
you've mentioned a few athletes, just to give people an idea of who you work with. I know it's probably a lot, but maybe give us a quick rundown of who you work with, and then we can get into some specifics, because I've heard some stories, and I'd like
so in the brute sphere, you know, Dallin Pepper, Emma Cary, and Fee Sagafi. And then, you know, like some of the, just like a list of names. So like Jason represents Josh Bridges and Matty Rogers. But we, like, as a pair, you know, we work to, you know, do deals and help grow their brands. And then, you know, he also is involved with like Amanda Barnhart and Danielle Brandon. So, you know, we kind of like co-tag team recruited Amanda and Danielle. And then, you know, we've got Bethany Shadburne. You know, we've got Stephanie Chung, Colleen Foch, you know, like the traditional sport athletes that we talked about. And then just like a multitude of other people, like, you know, Deb Graff works with like Christian Harris and like Annika Greer, like a young gun, and Meg Reardon. And then like Jared Graybeal, who we just brought on to start working with a specific athlete, Ariel Lowen, because they have a really tight connection, and she's got a cool brand. Yeah, and so there's a whole list of athletes that we work with. But yeah, so I mean, other Alexis Raptis, like, we had Cary Pierce before she retired, and she's transitioning into full-time focus on power abs. So she's she doesn't really want to do endorsement deals because she wants to spend all of her time with growing that business, which is she's been crushing. So so it's like there's just and then like I love to say that I represent one of my best friends, Jake Marconi, but in reality I just like to just be with Jake. So I just want to hang out with him.
So real quick, we don't have to get on too much of a tangent here, but what's so obviously Jake Marconi, who we're talking about, folks. Jake competed at was it Granite Games?
Yeah.
Last year? Okay. So obviously he's done a lot of work with Matt Frazier and HWPO. Is he coaching Jason Hopper? Like, what's the deal there? Because there's been a lot of sites, but I don't really know the details. You seem like you would.
Yeah, Jake works full time for Hard Work Pays Off, which is sick. Him and Matt like write the programming together.
Okay.
I think like I know that Jake writes programming a lot for it, right? Because he's one of the coaches. I don't know exactly what specific tracks he writes, but I'm pretty sure him and Matt just like collab on everything, because I know that they lock themselves away in like a room and like program for like a week on end. It's like it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so it's funny because like just inherently Jake and Matt are very very similar in like how they program and work, and it all like started really organically in the sense that like Matt's always kind of had a liking for Jake. Jake's just an incredible human being, and it's funny, you even look at like their photos of them when they were like in high school. It's like they both had these like long ass hair, like mop cuts, dude. It's like they were like, I love it. They could have been brothers. And so they're built the same. They like a lot of the same things, and like so Matt's always just kind of had like an inherent interest in Jake, and then he's like, oh, Jake's like, this is what I'm doing. And Matt's like, oh, I really like that. And Matt's like, well, I program a little differently than most. Like, check it out. Here it is. And Jake's like, well, that's right how I program. This is what I did the last week. And Matt's like, oh my God, that's super similar to what I do. What the heck? Like, and so then they just started like vibing like that. And then, Matt's like, hey, will you write a few warm-ups for Hard Work Pays Off? Like, and so Jake like wrote a bunch of warm-ups. Matt's like, oh, I love those. Like, okay, well, we try this. And then, Jake did that. Next thing you know, it blew up into this whole thing. And they're like, great business partners or like, great working relationship. And so, then Hopper was like, he needed some coaching from people that had like been to the games and like had that experience or whatever programming, whatever he needed, right? He needed something like that because he's just so new to it all. And so he started working with them, and obviously Matt's got to like, he has to do like all types of obligations and run around and build the brand and do this, that, whatever at competitions. So it's tough for him to just like go into the back and be like, hey, here's your warm up. You ready? Like, let's prep this, that, whatever. So they tasked Jake with doing that for Hopper at Rogue, and they did really well together. And I think they vibe really well together. It's just interesting because Jake is also a competitor. And
well, that's what I was about to ask. I was like, how does that freaking work? And Jake, so
I mean, dude, look,
whereas I don't.
Like at the end of the day, it's like Jake wants Jason to do as well as he could do, but that is not going to come with the sacrifice of Jake's performance. And so Jake wants to go out there and beat him when he's competing against him, like straight up, just like Jason wants to beat Jake, and they want to beat everybody, right? Like they're competitors, right? Like these guys work their tails off. And so like at Wodapalooza, they're going to compete against each other.
I love it.
And I can't wait. I love it. Like, but I'm team Jake Marconi till I die. So, Yeah, and so we'll see how it goes. I mean, they're not like he's not coaching Jason there. I don't think. Like I think they'll have people supporting them, right? Like I know Sammy runs around like crazy supporting those guys, and I'm sure she'll be doing that. And I'm sure Matt will be giving insight on workouts, like how to attack, etc. Right? Because obviously, dude's the best at doing that, clearly. And so like I don't know. Like I'll be supporting Jake and doing whatever he needs. Like when Jake competes, I'm literally like trembling with adrenaline a little bit right now just talking about it because when Jake competes, it's like I feel like my heart is like on the floor because that's my boy. And so I just lose my mind. And so I can't wait for him to compete. I can't wait for Wodapalooza. I'm so excited.
When I was at the Brute Camp, and I was hanging out with Dallin, and we had some good Dallin Peppers who we're talking about.
Yep.
For folks listening, we were doing some. I better get it right because if he's sponsored by these people, then if I don't say it right, Go Wad. Yes, Go Wad. I don't know if he's sponsored, but that's what we were doing.
Okay. He's not.
Anyways, yeah. Well, I didn't want to say Rom Wad, and then you're like, hey, he's sponsored by this. I'm like, shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
We were stretching. Okay. Anyways, and he was like, yeah, man, I don't know if I could be coached by someone that could beat me.
Yeah, man.
Look, I'm just saying. Just saying.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, Jake is like dumb fit, dude. He's so good. It's just, and I think people know how good he is. They just want to see it, like just string it all together. Yeah. And like we talk about this all the time, right? Like when we went to Granite Games, Jake was all like hyped up, like, yeah, I got to qualify for the games. And I was like, yo, I believe it. You're gonna win this thing, like. And the thing is, he has the ability to. He's capable of it.
Sure.
Then they put out a 1 max snatch, and I was like, okay, that's a tough start. Because even if he had, his best snatch moving into that was like 265, and even if the thing is, he can always like work high on his top end weight. So like if he's in a workout and he has to snatch 265 for reps, like he'll figure out how to do it. But his top end strength on that was never like that impressive. And so I'm like, man, even if you hit 270, which he didn't. He caught it and then lost it behind him. Like he nearly hit it.
Damn.
If he had hit that 5-pound PR, it was like 22nd place. Like because dudes are just like ridiculous these days. It's insane. If you're not hitting 300 pounds, you're like not even competing. It's like, like I remember like Medeiros hit 285 at the MAC, and I think that was like 8th place. I'm like 285 is 8th place. Like, are you kidding me?
That's how strong people are.
Yeah, like 6 people hit like 300 pounds there. I was like, what the hell is happening? And so. Anyways, it was like that. So he did the best he could there, and he did his thing, and then the next event was like actually supposed to be a good event for him. He just got butchered by that thing, that thruster run workout, and then it was like, all right, so day 1 went terribly, and then day 2 he comes out swinging right with like a 2nd place, and then like a 4th place and a 9th place, like big jump,
solid finishes.
Yeah, like it's like, and this is what you're capable of. And then the last day he did his thing too, and it was all good. But it was like, yeah, Jake, like
couldn't overcome the snatch.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, look, we need to just. The thing is, he came in like all hyped up, like just not being who he was, trying to be like uber focused and intense, and whatever. And it's like he's just more laid back and like has fun, and like he's doing this because he loves to, and he loves to compete, and it's fun to compete, it's fun to be in the race, so he eased up after day 1, and then it went really well. And so it's like, I think it was a big learning thing for him. It was a learning thing for me too, to just try to remember to try to keep him chill. So yeah, I'm like excited for Wodapalooza because I think he's got a lot to show, and I don't think it really matters either way how it goes, because at the end of the day, like, he's got so much more to offer than just being good at CrossFit. And it's something we've discussed, and it's like, dude, who cares? But if you're there, it's like you might as well put some people on notice, and so, yeah, so I'm excited for that. And, he's really good. He could beat anybody. But then it's like, talking about Dallin, dude, like, God, I'm so excited for that kid.
Well, and look, this is what I told him now. I was like, dude, if you were at any other semifinal, you would have qualified.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he should have just qualified there too. Like, it's like you can play that shoulda, woulda, coulda game. It's like you could do it at your
Sure.
event, or you could do it at any other event too.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, he would have qualified, but yeah, he should have handled business and qualified at West Coast too, and he knows that. Honestly, I'm happy he didn't.
Yeah.
It lit a fire in him that like is like, you can't really communicate. Like he'll text me
Agreed.
things like he'll text me stuff like, oh, that is like profound for his age, and just like acknowledging like some of the emotions he feels towards, being one of the best in the world. And it's like, yeah, dude, that can't be taught. It's got to be experienced, right? And
That's good.
and that's where Dallin is. And so like, yeah, like, dude, had he just like knew how to move a D ball a little bit better, like easily qualifies, right? Like there's just like these little things that would have been a game changer. But then it's like, who knows? Maybe he would have went out to the games and gotten buckled, and then you got to deal with that. So
Yeah, when we were sitting at dinner, and we've got our phones on the table, and he like taps his phone to whatever, see what time it is, and I see he's got the screenshot of the leaderboard.
Yeah.
I was like, this motherfucker's angry.
Yeah, I screenshotted it when it happened, and I sent it to him, and I sent it to Alexis Raptis, and I told him put it as your background.
Yeah, man.
And they did, both of them. I mean, Alexis Raptis, same thing, dude. Like,
Right. The same deal happened to her. Right?
Oh yeah, she like that last workout, such a good workout for her. She just caught the last clean in a weird position and missed it, and it's like, and then she took 20 seconds and hit it. And it was like, dang, dude, had you just taken 10 seconds before hitting it the first time and just made sure you caught it in the right way, you'd have been there too. And it's like, you can do shoulda, woulda, coulda, like all the time. It's just not, I'm the worst at that, but it really just provides you zero value, right? Because in reality, it did not happen. So why are you wasting energy and time thinking about that? Like you need to be the next steps. So yeah.
You talk about kind of being there at these competitions. Do you, and obviously you're not on, well, I guess maybe you could be on the floor. Do you have a competition role as an agent to these folks, or because like, for example, like before we met, I now that I'm getting to obviously see you here on video, I've seen pictures of you, right, on whether it's with Danielle Brandon in the back or stuff like that. So you clearly have some type of role at these competitions, right?
Yeah, like, so before competition, it's like just trying to make sure that there's all the food's getting there, right? Like we have our PT guys showing up, all of those things are taken care of, like, Airbnb, whatever. And then there, right, I typically have somebody's coach's pass, right? Like if it's a competition that Jake's at, I'll have Jake's pass, right? Or if Danielle's there, I'll have Danielle's pass. So I usually just have somebody's pass. And essentially I'm just like bag boy, like obviously I got to go around, I got to talk to companies and like, if we're in the process of negotiating anything or like, saying hi, saying hello, thanking them for the support, getting athletes anything they need from those brands, etc. If I need to go out and meet new brands, right, like then I'm doing that. But in terms of the athletes, like I'm, anything I can to de-stress them and let them focus on what they have to do to compete. So if that's going and getting food, refilling water, carrying bags here, getting, shuffling them over to the PT person and like organizing that, helping them with their warm up, like strategizing, like, cause at the end of the day, like, I do CrossFit too. And I can strategize the workout very well and think of ways to be efficient, throughout it. So, I'll brainstorm those things with them if need be, right? Like obviously I don't want to step on any coach's toes, but I have a good relationship with all the coaches that work with athletes too. So they understand that. But yeah, I'm a glorified bag boy at competitions, dude. Like just anything I can to, just to help them focus and have fun and kick ass, right? Like when Danielle Brandon's stressed out and her foot hurts, I literally was like massaging her foot in the back of the Warm Area West Coast Classic, like as she was like upset. And I'm like, dude, I'll literally do anything to make it so that you guys are successful. Like I don't care. So
see, that's kind of my, and I'm not saying all athletes are this way, but that's kind of my perception is like, you're like a psychologist at these events.
I said that to Danielle. I was like, yo, having a law degree is pointless as an agent. I was like, I should have gotten a psychology degree. And it's not true. Having a law degree is not pointless. It's absolutely something that's great to have. And I've thought about it many a times, but literally, like, I'm like, this is you're in the profession of human feeling. So a psychology degree would be a lot better in that scenario.
I mean, look, I had Danielle on this podcast, and to this date, it is it is the most popular podcast that we've done, and she's been really great. Every time I've messaged her, she's just a great person.
She's incredible, yeah.
And seriously, like, I have no bad things to say, and I think, like, and I've even messaged her. I'm like, and I'm sure you guys talk about this. Like, her brand is so interesting, right? Because she is not this prim and proper, like.
No, dude, she's raw and fucking real, and I love
exactly.
it. And that is exactly what we try to lean into, like that whole flipping off the crowd thing. Like, I said to her, I was like, yo, you're gonna win. Like, you're gonna win this event, like, and Justin, her coach, said that too. Like, you're going to set this place on fire, like
100%.
And like, people don't realize though, but in the back area, right? Like, when they had her corralled off and everything, right?
Like an animal.
Get her nose swabbed, like, at the start of the day, every time they entered the arena, and then every time. So if they left and came back, or like for events, like, she had to test like 3-4 times a day. And then she's warming up for that event, right? And they have like the ramp and the stairs, and she's got her own ramp and stairs that she's like warming up on. But dude, every time she's using it, they are mopping it down, and it's like, all right, what's the irony there is insane, right? Like, she's the only one using it right now, so just wait until she's done, mopping it. Dude, she can run up and down those things like faster than I can on my feet, and but one of the times they mop it, right? It's wicked wet. She slips, like, eats it, falls on her head, falls off the side. Oh shit! And so Justin texts me like, dude, she's like crying back here, like, she's super upset, like, yada yada. She was just overwhelmed, man. It was like there's just so much going on, like, and she felt like a survivor's guilt almost that, like, she's there and Bethany and Cary aren't, and those are her girls that she trained with for the better part of a year, and she just wants to go out there and put it down on this workout. She knows she can. So I was like, look, dude, tell her to dip her hands in chalk and make as much of a mess as she possibly can, like, all over that place, so that they have to mop it up. But like, she's going to blow the roof off this place, and then like, the rest is literally like history, like she did. But I said to her, I was like, hey, when you win, you should flip the birds, like, because it's like to the situation, it's not to the fans, right? She loves the fans, and
so that was something you guys talked about.
Oh yeah, like, dude, like,
amazing.
We're fed up to the situation, right? Like, the situation sucked, so I'm like let them know, And she was like, yeah, like, fuck yeah, she's just like, she's always like, she laughs and she's like, that'd be so dope. Like, that's just what she says, right? Like, yeah. Oh yeah, that is sick, and so then she won, right? And like, I was standing there, and there's that photo, right, where I'm like screaming down at her, like, as she won, yes. Like, just so fired up, and I was like, and she just turned and was like that, and I was like, dude, it went viral, right? Like, and I thought it would. I figured it would. I was hoping somebody would get the shot, and somebody, like, obviously crushed it, and people are just like, they've lost it, right? And it's that DBE, right? It's that Danielle Brandon energy, and so.
Which I've told her, we need shirts. We literally need shirts.
Dude, can you see video on this?
Yes, I can see video.
All right, here, check it out.
Now, keep in mind, unless you want me to blur it out, so will everybody else once it's produced. But I can blur it out in post if you don't want this out in the world.
Here, just blur it out for now, just in case. But
yeah, I'll blur it out in post.
I think it should be put on the back of the shirt. Can you see that?
Holy shit! Yeah, dude,
that's sick, right?
Fuck so yeah,
those will get made. Yeah, no, don't worry, dude. People want them. Like, she's just like, Danielle is like, she's like who you aspire to be, right? Like, it's nice to be prim and proper and really friendly, like as you should be, because she is all of those things.
Yeah.
But that side of you that wants to take out, just a little bit of like the voice of saying like, no, don't do that. Like, hey, that's not kosher. Hers is definitely turned down a little bit. Like she is who she is, and she's not going to apologize for it. And I just like, we love that about her. And that's just all we want to do is like push her to be that. Because it's what the sport needs, man. Like they need that badass. They've never had it before, right? Like, I mean, kind of Josh Bridges was kind of that badass, right? Like who'd lose his mind.
I agree.
But she's just like even on like another level because Josh is very like, focused and tamed on that stuff. But like, yeah, dude, and she has so much potential, man. Like, I'll tell you, the crop of like just the women that we work with, like they're all so good and they all have so much potential. It's like it would have been scary for people to see Bethany Shadburne at the games. I think I
was so disappointed.
She would have podiumed.
She didn't get
I think she would have podiumed. I'm not kidding. I think Danielle Brandon could win the games, right? I mean, Emma Cary could win the games. Give it a few years. She's obviously just so young and just learning so much.
17.
Like, yeah, it's disgusting. Like, Dallin Pepper could win the games, right? Like, it's like, there's just so much potential with these people. It's just so exciting. But just Danielle's background itself, right? Like, Division I swim offers, Division I track and field athlete, level 10 gymnast, so like elite level gymnast. Like, this doesn't inherently moves incredibly well. Like it's just that's another big thing I'm proud of with like all of our athletes. Like all of these athletes coming up that we work with, they move so well, and that's huge for longevity in the space.
I mean, I feel like it's a prerequisite now. Maybe 5-7 years ago you could get away with it. Now it's like, man, you better be like perfect because of where it's going. It's the freaking Hunger Games out there, man. It's like who can survive.
Oh yeah, I mean, the athletes out there, even the ones we don't work with, they're just like stupid good. Like they're just so good. It's like it's wild.
Yeah.
But it makes it exciting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Coop. Man, thank you for your time, dude. Is there anything that you wanna add before we jump off here? I appreciate you sharing that secret knowledge. I'll blur it out so no one can see it, but that was badass. That was cool.
Yeah, we'll be trying to work on that. No, man, I think that's it. Just people, if you are in the Instagram world, you can find me at Cooper Marsh, and I mean, I should probably get off that app a little bit more. But besides that, yeah, go
it's
out.
It's your
job. Be nice to people, folks. Be kind, and put your phone down and go live life a little bit.
Hell yeah, man.
That's it. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, dude. This has been really fun.
Thank you, Coop. Sincerely appreciate it, and hopefully this is one of many, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, will you be at Wadapalooza?
I will not be at Wadapalooza, unfortunately. I have an engagement that weekend, so no, I will not be there. And side note, I feel really shitty about it because my wife qualified in the Elite RX division. She's a really fucking good CrossFitter.
Hell yeah.
And she, real quick backstory. She also ran Division I track. She was a pole vaulter like Danielle.
Oh, sick.
She's a heptathlete, crazy, stupid, good athlete. And I'm not just saying that because she cooks me great dinners. Like she's phenomenal. It's really cool to see her do her thing.
D1 10 different events. Like, come on.
Yeah. She's pretty fucking good. So, anyways, so she coaches track now at Sanford University here that's where we live, Birmingham, Alabama.
Wait, you live in Alabama?
Yeah, man.
Dude, I love it. I love Alabama, and I know Sanford. I've been to Birmingham many a times. I go to Lake Martin like all the time with some of my dear friends. Dude, I love
amazing.
Lake Martin. It's my favorite place.
I grew up going there, man. That's awesome. Oh
yeah.
Wow, I feel like
Birmingham like sometime soon, probably, because they actually that couple who I love to death. They just got engaged and they got a puppy, so I got to come through.
We'll talk offline about that, and after we log off, because I want to say a few things. Yeah. So, anyways, she has track meet. So, and then I have something as well. So, unfortunately, no. But we've made our schedule so that next year she can be a part of that. They changed Wadapalooza dates because of what happened with the CrossFit world, and then when they moved it back to the original date, she had thought that it was going to be the other date, and it was kind of a schedule mix-up. So unfortunately, no.
Dang. Well, we'll cross paths in person soon enough.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, dude. Well, I'll see you later, man. Thank you again.
All right, brother.